Okay, diversification, diversification, diversification. We've all heard it, we all know about it. We should never put all of our eggs into just one basket. Everyone always argues for having a diversified portfolio. It's one of them things that every investor absolutely must do. But I think, like with anything in life, you should always look at both sides and challenge what is the accepted, even if in your own mind you already agree or disagree with the strategy of diversification. The first thing to say here is that actually I'll be really open and honest and say that my opinions on diversification within investing have really shifted. When I first started out in the world of investing and I started researching what it meant to be an investor, what it meant to have an investment portfolio, all of the very basic things, I heard the reasons pretty much solely for diversification. There was not really much out there that a beginner would come across sharing the reasons maybe against diversification. I understood that if I wanted to reduce my risks and not lose all of my money, which I absolutely wanted to make sure, I must diversify. So I thought that I will buy an ETF, I will buy a basket of good quality stocks, and I will own many companies. That felt pretty good. Fast forward to now, I have 72% of my entire portfolio in 3 assets. 2 of them are stocks, Palantir and Tesla, which I cover on this channel, and one of them is within my cryptocurrency portfolio. My opinions have changed because firstly, I now have hands-on experience. I have been investing for a few years now, and I understand what different strategies actually mean in a real world example. Number 2, I've done lots of research. When I say I have researched for and against diversification, I mean I have spent many hours reading, listening to just about interviews, different people's opinions, everything that I can possibly get my hands on to understand whether diversification really is this one, everyone must follow strategy, or actually is it overrated and we don't really need it. And thirdly, I've really understood that it depends completely on the person. I think it depends on a lot of things, including the stage that you're at in your investing journey, your age. Do you have any dependents? What's your risk tolerance like? What's your lifestyle like? What are your goals like? When do you need to hit those goals? If you are currently in the process of changing your financial future, then you need a community of like-minded investors surrounding you. This is so important to have a sounding board, especially for when the markets get mad. My Patreon is a fantastic place for this, and at some point in the future, I'm going to be closing my Patreon off to any new members to make sure that it is kept very exclusive so that we can build a community whereby we actually know each other. So if you want to join, please use a link in the description below. Now, having a diversified portfolio reduces your risks for sure, and this is because you are able to minimize any of your losses because they are balanced by your gains. So the losses are offsetting the gains, and overall you hope to basically get an average performance out of your investment portfolio. But what it also does is it minimizes your winners. It reduces your possible returns, because let's just say that you have a diversified portfolio and you have 3% of that portfolio in your best performing stock. You will only see a limited amount of returns from that best performing stock compared to if you had, let's say, 50% of your entire portfolio in that one position. I just want to clarify something quickly before we move on. ETFs versus individual stocks. I am not saying that individual stock investing, i.e. picking individual stocks, is any better than investing into ETFs or index funds. What I am saying is that I think a concentrated portfolio whereby most of your money is in a few positions that you really research, you really care about, you really follow well, is way less risky than picking 20, 25, 30 individual stocks. I think if you're leaning towards picking, above sort of 15 stocks, individual stocks, then you're probably just better off having an ETF or an index fund. It's kind of like with multitasking. If you are doing 4 things at any given time, then each of those things, if you are allocating, the same amount of resource to them, they are all getting 25% of your time, effort, and focus. Not any one of those is getting 100%. This is the same with an investment portfolio. If you are following 10 different stocks and you're allocating 10% of your net worth into each of those different positions, then they are limited. They are capped in the potential maximum gains that they can get because they're only getting 10% of the the money at the beginning into them. And also, you need to follow those companies. You need to know what's going on. You need to watch their earnings. You need to read the transcripts from their earnings. You need to know what's going on in the company. What are they investing into? What changes have they made to their leadership team? And if you have 10 of those, you probably can't spend a lot of time doing your due diligence in each of those 10 different positions. So actually each one is only getting 10% of your allocated investment time, whereas they probably should actually be getting, 80, 90, 100% of it. And like I said, I now have about 72% in just 3 assets. 2 of those are stocks that I follow very closely every single day. At any given time, I am pretty certain that I know what's going on in that company, and I'm constantly researching, learning more, everything that goes on, even reading books about the sector that these companies are in. And that is taking up the majority of my free time, I won't lie. And that's just 2 stocks. So I can only imagine if someone wants to do an average amount of due diligence, then that's going to take up, in multiple companies, how much time do people really have to allocate to that? And then that's when I start thinking that actually it's better to have an ETF or an index fund that you don't have to follow so closely, if that makes sense. So like I just said, if you have strong conviction into, let's just say, one particular company, but you only invested 10% of your money into that instead of 50% of your money into that, and that actually went on to do really well, and you kind of knew that because you were following this company, you saw the potential, then you're going to kick yourself a little bit. You would have missed out on those extra returns. But equally, you could argue that you are getting missed opportunities within the market by actually doubling down and allocating your money to a few positions. Because let's just say you have 2 positions, Alphabet, Google, and you have Amazon. Both of those companies are, sort of featured within the same sector. You are kind of betting on the tech sector very heavily there, whereas fantastic gains could be seen in the healthcare sector, the financial sector, and actually you don't have exposure to that. So that's another thing to think about. For the majority of investors, and I'm speaking about your average person that doesn't really want to research different companies, they don't really care. All they want to do is allocate a little bit of their money each month that comes from their paycheck into an investment account so that they can start building towards financial freedom. With those people, having a diversified portfolio, whether it's through an ETF, an index fund, whatever it may be, makes absolute sense. It really, really does, because what they are doing is they are building themselves a pot of money that is going to compound and it's going to grow. And whilst they're doing that, they are actually reducing their risk and they're taking the passive approach. They don't need to spend loads of time understanding what a balance sheet is telling them. It's the easy way and it makes a lot of sense for the majority of people. So not only are they reducing their risk, they are also kind of guaranteeing market average returns. And the word average there sounds pretty bad, like who wants to be average? But actually, getting market average returns can make people millionaires. It has done many, many times. But this is only going to work if you are willing to have a long-term mindset. You have to be willing to invest, let's say $200 every single month into an S&P 500 ETF. And then you absolutely have to be willing to keep doing that consistently and leaving it alone for decades, years and years and years and years. Because that's when compound interest actually comes into play and grows that pot of money into a really large sum of money. And this is really amazing, this passive, diversified approach, because what it does is it gives the average person making an average income the chance to become a millionaire at some point in their life. It gives the average person the chance to retire when they hit retirement age, to retire with a pot of money that will allow them to actually enjoy their retirement. For example, look at this. You can invest $200 every single month for 45 years and become a millionaire. But this is the thing. Not many people want to do that. Not many people have that long-term mindset, that delayed gratification. And fair enough, a lot of people want to fast track that. They don't want to wait 45 years to become a millionaire. They want to do that as soon as possible so that they can start enjoying life as soon as possible. Something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, especially over the last year and a half sort of time, is that wealth is often made by focusing on just one thing. going all in. Think about businesses, think about startups. You don't see company founders starting 16 different businesses at the same time, allocating, splitting their time 16 ways and trying all these different things and just hoping one of them gets big. No, they don't do that. They absolutely go all in into one business. This is how the wealthiest people make their net worths. They go all in on one thing, they build their money, they build their wealth, and then they start diversifying into other areas of the business, opening new businesses, getting into angel investing, all these things later on. So the lesson here is concentration builds wealth, diversification protects wealth. And I've given you an example there in terms of business, but this absolutely holds true. And we can see this in investing as well. So we have people that can reach financial freedom and make their millions in 45, 50 years sort of time by having a very diversified portfolio. And then we have investors that have made their wealth very early on in their life. And that always happens not through diversification, but actually through concentrating, a concentrated portfolio. So let's just think about some examples here. We have Warren Buffett, we have Charlie Munger, we have Bill Ackman, we have, all these famous investors that we talk about now. We look at their portfolio and we often look at their advice even, and we think that they must have had an ETF, they must have had a diversified portfolio of many, many different individual stocks to get to where they are. But actually, that's not the case. What they did is they concentrated most of their capital on only a handful of businesses, a handful of different investments that they really, really understood. They placed massive, massive bets on a few positions that then grew their wealth to such an amount that they were then able to diversify to protect the wealth that they had built. Right now, Berkshire Hathaway has over 50% just in Apple. 5 of the top holdings make up 80% of the entire portfolio. And Warren Buffett himself has said before that 3 wonderful businesses is all you need in this life to do well. Most wealthy people made their fortunes through investing into just one company, their company, or through investing into just a select few businesses that they understood very, very well. They didn't buy the S&P 500 and hold on to it for 45 years. Even John Bogle, who is the founder of Vanguard, and actually he invented low-cost index funds, he didn't make his fortune, his wealth, through investing into index funds. He actually made it through his business, Vanguard. And I learned through this book here, which you should absolutely 1000% get your hands on and read. It is The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Fantastic book. It's the Guide to Happiness and Wealth. So many golden nuggets in that book. Honestly, get your hands on it if you are interested in self-improvement, building wealth, anything like that. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. Anyway, I learned through this book that you must own equity. So you must own a piece of a business to gain your financial freedom. So if you are not starting your own business, then you must own a piece of someone else's business. You must own equity in a very good business to actually someday gain financial freedom. And a lot of people are actually really, really not diversified, even though they think they are. They actually have all of their money in one asset without even realizing it. Their house. This means they have 100% conviction in just this asset, just the roof over their head, and they very strongly believe, if they obviously purchased it for this reason, they strongly believe that the value of it will go up over time. They had enough conviction in it to even take out loans, but everyone just seems to forget this, to forget real estate when we think about our investment portfolios. So I made the point earlier that I think that if you are investing into individual stocks and you're going to have 20 of them, then it's just better to get an ETF. So what do I think about having an ETF versus having just a selection of companies that you really believe in? Well, kind of like with the whole house analogy, if you think really, really strongly that the value of your house will go up over time and you're willing to put all of your money into that, if you feel that strongly about, let's just say 1 stock, 2 stocks, even 3 different companies, then why wouldn't you put all your money into those instead of putting it into an ETF that will return you on average, let's say 8% a year after inflation, when you could instead put all of your money into the stocks that you really, really believe, you really kind of know will return you a higher percentage. It feels almost riskier not to do that, but only if you really understand the businesses and you follow them very, very closely. So we've spoken about all of these really successful, really well-known people, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, but what about someone that's actually had a very undiversified portfolio that has seen success, that is maybe more of an everyday person and more relatable. I've spoken about him before on this channel. One day I'd love to have a conversation with this guy, but it is Jason DeBolt. He went all in on Tesla stock in 2013. He held this stock when it was plummeting. He added more. It's a crazy, crazy story. You should absolutely learn his story, but he managed to retire very early with a lot of money. And he went to the extreme that most people wouldn't do. You know, when Tesla stock was dipping, he sold his house and he put all of that money into Tesla stock. In the early times of his investing journey, he even slept in his car. It was a Tesla, so we can say that, in a parking lot at his work, which I think was Google, if I remember rightly. So, you know, he did everything he could to invest as much money into Tesla as he possibly could afford, because his conviction and his research was so strong. It absolutely paid off for him. But that doesn't come without risk. Of course it doesn't. And then there's the example of the Coca-Cola millionaires. I think his name was Pat Monroe. And he saw that in the town that he was in, or the village, whatever it was, that people were buying Coca-Cola even during economic difficulties. They were deciding that they wanted to spend their hard-earned money on purchasing Coca-Cola instead of maybe putting it elsewhere. He saw this as such a moat. He did his research. He followed this story that he was seeing. He had such strong conviction for this company that, he betted all in on this one company, and it absolutely paid off again. And other people around him were doing the same thing because he was telling them about it. And then what happened is there was this small population of people that were all Coca-Cola millionaires. So some things to ask yourself when thinking about diversification versus maybe a more concentrated portfolio. Do you have a high risk tolerance? Are you going to have the stomach for this sort of investing? Are you going to be able to sleep soundly at night knowing all of your money is maybe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positions instead of spread across many? Are you driven by emotions, or are you driven by logic and by research? What are your aims? When do you want to invest? What's your timeline for this? Why are you investing? What are your goals? Do you have any strong convictions? Do you have the time and willingness? And do you actually have the desire to research companies and follow them very, very closely? And it's okay if you don't. It's absolutely okay. The most important thing, I think, is to just start investing. Let's open this up in the comments below. Please leave me your thoughts on this. Leave me your experience on this if you've been investing for longer than me. Let's open up a dialogue in the comments below. I'm going to keep an eye on them, see what you guys think, see if any of you are for and against diversification or how you feel. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll be back shortly with another.